Imagine a small guarded village within this field. Over here were large concrete accommodation blocks for the guards and an enormous brick water tower. Now over here, the prisoners' compound occupied a 6-acre square area of land and contained accommodation blocks, bathhouse, a canteen, cinema, hospital, prison, theatre and a sewage disposal works. And right over there was the camp searchlight. This purpose-built village was rapidly assembled to house some 750 prisoners on this single site alone, because from 1942 up until 1948 the British Isles accommodated the mass arrival of some 500,000 Italian and German enemy prisoners of war. Brought in as an agricultural labour force to replace British workers who had left to fight on the front line, they all had to be housed somewhere. This complex is in fact only one of several hundreds of camps hastily built throughout Britain in 1942. Some put the figure at 1,500 and Lincolnshire contained at least 20 of them. However, these camps remain a largely hidden feature of British history, which is echoed by the scarcity of literature about the subject. There is one accessible, intact camp located near Moulton, North Yorkshire, called Eden Camp, which has been turned into a successful modern history-themed museum, but most purpose-built standard POW camps were converted or destroyed shortly after repatriation in 1948. The larger surviving camps in Lincolnshire, like the one built here, have only recently been demolished, this one less than 20 years ago. My name is Graham Victor Perkins, and in this film I focus on just one prisoner of war site at Moorby to demonstrate a method for the gathering of relevant information and tales regarding this particular camp. This method involves conducting 3 lines of investigation and then collating the results. Firstly, we need to investigate the tangible information, the original physical structure identified by maps, aerial photographs and geophysical surveys, and the recording of any remains that may still be in situ. The second strand of investigation involves searching for archival information, any original official reports or minutes, contemporary photos, postcards and letters, prisoner handiworks and clothing. Thirdly, our investigation turns to networking for narrative information, stories, reminiscences, hearsay, published articles, interviews, historical projects, exhibitions, talks, personal trophies, and camp life stories. Finally, we get to combine the results and think about how to publish and update the public record of this largely hidden feature of British history. So the reason I chose to focus on Moorby Camp number 79 in particular is because you can see clear aerial photos of the complete camp on Google Earth using the timeline. I have also established that there are wartime records held in the National Archives about various aspects of the camp. Also, I have found out that certain local history groups have collected stories relating to the forced workers who lived at this camp, and they really need retelling. Lincolnshire prisoner of war camp identification for this film was initially based on listings published both in Historic England's 2003 report Prisoner of War Camps 1939 to 1948, still freely downloadable from their website, and in the 2012 book Prisoner of War Camps in Britain During the Second World War, written by John and Diane Sutherland. There are now major errors and discrepancies within both publications, largely because of their age, but I found other camp identifiers through the SLHA and elsewhere. There are also dedicated websites such as Repatriated Landscape which may help, but there are discrepancies here too. So, to begin, here is a map of the 20 known POW camps in Lincolnshire amalgamated from those sources. Of these 20 camps, I have identified 13 sites as suitable for closer, tangible archaeological investigation using period maps, aerial photos and LiDAR manipulation. This means that 7 camps have been entirely removed and the whole site has been redeveloped for housing or other use. Desktop analysis from Bing Maps, Google Maps, Digimaps and LiDAR data reveal that those few camps with surviving remains are largely derelict or incorporated into farmsteads or light industry. This original photo of Kermington Camp shows an internal view of one of 8 huts in operation, but this recent photo shows how derelict and overgrown it has now become, with only 3 huts remaining. One reason for their dereliction may be that none in Lincolnshire have either been listed or interpreted via an information board or plaque for the general public to become aware of their historical importance. One of the most useful tools for investigating recent history is to use the timeline on Google Earth. Not only will you be able to see the chronology of a site, but sometimes the angle of the sun can reveal hidden features such as peaks and troughs in the landscape that may point to the existence of a structure. With the camp at Moorby, the timeline on Google Earth shows not only its almost complete layout from 2002, but its gradual dismantling over a 10-year period. Old maps are useful as a basis for recording too. In particular, the 1972 OS series of maps often show incredible detail. This 1972 map of Moorby Camp is structurally accurate when compared with an aerial photo and even shows the water tower, which is already removed on the earliest Google Earth image. This can be used as a basis for making your own detailed plan of the camp. Another important source for making a plan comes from your narrative investigation, where interviewees have described what and where certain buildings were situated. Here at Moorby, the location of the vehicle workshops were determined from such a narrative. Of course, if you want to investigate a wartime structure near to you, with permission from the landowner, you'll easily be able to go and see for yourself what tangible remains exist and what condition they might be in before recording them. Because of the sensitivity surrounding military infrastructure, there are very few official records directly relating to the World War II POW camps to reference. Even their seemingly haphazard dual numbering system was revealed to be a ruse to confuse the enemy, and it has become apparent that some material has simply been destroyed. However, the National Archives does contain some minutes from meetings and some reports that contain very significant information about how prisoners lived in this camp. The MAF 80 series are collections of minutes of the wartime agricultural executive committees dating from the start of World War II, and so give details of camp construction, how prisoners were deployed for agriculture throughout the war, and also give numbers of prisoners. I have located 10 collections of minutes specifically relating to Lincolnshire camps. From these collections, the following minutes were significant to the construction of Moorby Camp in 1943, summarised and categorised. FO939 series are Foreign Office inspection reports, which were carried out approximately every 6 months from the end of the war. The inspections mainly evaluate educational provision in the camps, but they also include basic information about numbers and nationalities of prisoners, staffing and camp activities. I have located 9 inspection reports for Lincolnshire camps. FO939/159 revealed the following reports relevant to post-war life at Moorby Camp from 1945, summarised and categorised. These minutes and reports are all freely available to view at the National Archives in London, and they can be copied. Any significant info relating to, in this instance, our camp at Moorby, can then be catalogued together chronologically. The F0939/159 file also revealed the identities of 14 hostels and satellite camps directly related to Moorby Camp, which are not on any list and need to be researched. Another important source of archival investigation is found in wartime aerial photographs. These aerial photographs can be requested through the Historic England website using a place name and National Grid reference, but they are not free. However, the provisional photocopies they supply are usually good enough quality to detect any imagery that you need, so you don't necessarily have to fork out for high quality photographic copies of the originals. This is a photocopy of a wartime aerial photograph of Moorby. You can see here rows of tents on each side of the main accommodation blocks. These tents were erected towards the conclusion of World War II to house the huge influx of German POWs, twice as many than the camp was originally built to house. At the bottom here is the searchlight. These details can be added to our plan of the camp. These photographs are of a letter posted from Moorby POW camp in 1943 by an Italian POW. The contents of similar archived personal correspondence, though vetted and often basic, could collectively add insight into how POWs managed to cope with forced worker reality, and would then add to our narrative investigation. Initial contact through Facebook with various archaeology/heritage groups within Lincolnshire revealed that there are ongoing studies of specific POW camps by members of these groups who are also members of other organisations such as the WWII. Following up these connections, I found that those who had researched POW camps were only too willing to share the stories that they had managed to uncover, resulting in 6 independent narratives, some containing multiple stories. I also found that, coincidentally, Heritage Lincolnshire were creating their own community research project about the camp under the title Layers of History, and I was given permission to use some of their research. One of the stories that Layers of History unearthed from a local resident was about a young girl whose parents ran the Moorby post office. The girl contracted TB and was put into an isolated hut near the green, next to the post office, right here. One of the prisoners from the camp heard of her plight. With permission from the guards, made a violin from one of the trees from the camp. He would walk from the camp just over there and sit outside the girl's hut and play for her. This brief investigation revealed the following narratives relevant to life at Moorby Camp from 1942 onwards, summarised and categorised. Now, to put it all together. Amalgamating all the findings of our investigation of Moorby POW camp forms a loose chronological outline of stories spanning its core existence. The combined information encompasses 14 topics of World War II social history, agriculture, artefacts, cinema, crime, education, etc., which could perhaps serve as menu subheadings on a dedicated website for the camp, triggered, for example, by a simple QR code built into a heritage plaque. So, as you can see, a lot of information can be sourced relatively easily from any tangible remains, archival records and narrative accounts relating to World War II POW camps. As far as thinking about how to publish and inform the public of the results of your investigation, the first step is to find out whether the historic environment record of your project reflects your findings. If not, then please email an update to your local HER through the Heritage Gateway website. Secondly, you could notify members of your local archaeology heritage groups and suggest including your results on any website or blog that they may have involvement with. A third possibility is to generate enough interest through these groups and others to propose the idea of installing a permanent information board. Post-war, this camp was used as a pig farm, the owners having paid the princely sum of 2 shillings and 6pence to the War Office for the buildings. The camp was also used to rear turkeys for a number of years and is designated poultry houses on the 1970s detail map. The site has now been returned to how it was before the war and is now part of the Reesby estate. All that is left of the camp now is this pile of rubble from the vehicle workshops, the last of the buildings to be demolished. However, hypothetically, as perhaps a lasting record of its historical importance to both the Second World War and to the residents of this area, such rubble could be repurposed as a local volunteer-led community rebuilding project to construct a roadside sculpture to support, say, a heritage plaque with all camp information and narratives, along with photos, plans and illustrations contained on a website instantly accessible via an embedded QR code. This is simply creative thinking for a local heritage group project.